Hallo und herzlich willkommen. Hier lernst du alles rund um das Thema Investor Relations, Fundraising und Kapitalmarkt. Mein Name ist Julia Stötzl und ich bin Gründerin und CEO von Investor Relations Beratung Unicorn. Unicorn ist auf einer Mission, Investor Relations für die nächste Generation einzuführen. Das bedeutet ganz konkret die Integration von digitalen Medien wie zum Beispiel LinkedIn, Podcast, Newsletter in die klassische Kapitalmarktarbeit. Mehr Informationen zu Unicorn, aber auch zum Podcast findest du unter unicornconsulting.com. Und jetzt wünsche ich euch viel Spaß beim Zuhören.
So today we have another exciting guest with us. It's Martin Ziegenbalg. Martin is the EVP Investor Relations at Deutsche Post DHL Group, and the company is a leader in global logistics and transportation with a market cap of about 50 billion euros. With over 20 years of experience, Martin has been navigating through the transformation of the IR industry, and today we want to tap into his long-standing knowledge by talking about the evolution of investor relations and by doing a deep dive onto digitalization and ESG. Martin, it's great to have you with us today. Welcome to SuiTreats.
Well, thank you, Julia, Caroline. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's dive right in. We usually start with a little introduction on your own side. So maybe for everyone who doesn't know you yet, maybe you can give us a 1-minute introduction of yourself and how you even got into the world of investor relations at Deutsche Post DHL Group.
Yes, sure. Actually, I started off my professional career on the investment banking side as an equities analyst. I did that for a bit more than 10 years, actually. And wow. One of my last assignments there was to help with the IPO of Deutsche Post. We were back in 2000, right? And it was shortly after the successful IPO that I was approached whether I wanted to do the investor relations function at Deutsche Post, so changing sites. And I did that, obviously, as you can see. And it has ever since been a very interesting journey, which I myself hadn't thought that it would be such a long and eventful journey.
Super interesting.
No, absolutely interesting. And thank you again for joining us today. Always an interesting switch from equity to the IR side, but always I think it's a successful one. But maybe before we look further into the future of IR, we had a question about how IR has developed in the last 20 years, at least in your perspective, and especially during these last years of pandemic, which have been quite a switch for investor relations functions.
Yeah, I think you're mentioning a very important point. I think we have only recently seen a real acceleration in the way the IR function and practice is changing and evolving. So if I look back at my 20 plus years here at Deutsche Post, I think for the first 10, maybe even 15 years, there hasn't been much change really in the way we are performing our function. So a lot of face-to-face meetings, which is good because it's about forming relationships. But
absolutely.
Technology wasn't playing a big role really on our function. And it's not too long ago that I was carrying around thick bundles of printed paper on roadshows. Yeah?
Wow. Yeah.
So I think the pandemic and also technological progress has brought upon a couple of new interesting options on how to perform our function.
Got it. Yeah, it's very interesting to get the perspective of like someone who has been in the industry for quite some time and really to compare what were best practices back then and now. So how would you say, or how would you describe the interaction with shareholders has changed in financial communication, and to what extent is that really driven by changed investor engagement? So how our investors are behaving differently today?
Yeah, there has been a bit of an evolution, I would think. Initially, there was clearly a focus on having strong relations to the sell side, to the analysts who were playing their role as intermediaries, right?
Yeah.
I think where the IR function has made progress already over a longer time is getting better to know their actual counterparts on the buy side, Yeah, who are the decision makers? And indeed, I'm looking back at relationships with people who have equally been very long in that position or with the same firm. And I think that's very important. Know your customer. And that's actually also what I brought with me from my earlier career, learning to think like investors and learning to understand what's making them tick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super important. I mean, I also started out actually in investment banking, so knowing how the other side is thinking about it really helps you to get perspective, right, when you are on the investor relations side.
I can only recommend to have in any IR team some first-hand professional experience, either on the sell side or on the buy side.
Yeah, definitely adds quite a bit of value. And what about on the forward-looking side? How do you think this interaction and relationship, for example, with investors will change? Do you think you will be approaching investors and shareholders in a different manner, in a more modern manner, given the new technology you're using?
Yeah, I mean, the life on the buy side hasn't become easier either, right? So, I mean, I think it's about efficiency. It's about making various options available to investors on how they want to gather their information. Yeah. So you've got the classical formats, you've got face-to-face meetings on a roadshow in the conference. But more and more, we have learned that you can maintain relationships pretty well also in a virtual format. And particularly for a group of our size and breadth, there's a lot of information to be gathered and a lot of information that we as IR are keen to bring across and make available. And here, more contemporary formats like just what we are doing here, podcasts,
exactly,
and similar formats are going to be very helpful going forward to enable our investors or the analysts to pick up information not only in the 60-minute face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's also something that I'm always trying to tell kind of the market, that it's very important to address your audience where they want to be addressed, right? Whether it's a podcast, whether it's social media, whether it's face-to-face in a meeting, but having all of these options available to you as investor relations, I think is super important. It becomes more important down the line. Maybe can you dive in a little bit more into what digital formats you are now using in investor relations to reach those audiences, apart from podcasts that we're doing now, but what other digital formats would you consider relevant?
Well, let's start off with something very, very basic and not too fancy. But let me just give you the example. With each quarterly reporting that we're doing, I'm also shooting a short video clip. A short video clip that you find alongside all the other material on the reporting app on that day. And I try to focus in this max 3-minute clip to bring across what is our main message on this reporting day. Ideally, without referring to any numbers or something, but basically trying to bring across, okay, what is the mood like, how we are seeing the world. And I have introduced that 2-3 years ago, and we see constant good pickup rates, and it's something that obviously is of help. So it's just like when two colleagues are chatting about, Deutsche Post was reporting, I didn't have a chance to listen in, what are they saying? So you're either tapping on one of your colleagues who has been listening through the investor call and everything, or you refer to this 3-minute video to get the main message, if you like.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And it really does change, I don't know, when you think about the one voice policy, back in the day it was just your quarterly reports, some other news that came out, but now you have to add to the equation all these new outlets of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have been looking at the idea to mention another format. And by my age, I'm not the natural user of social media, probably, but I was sort of volunteering in exploring the social media world with my LinkedIn account, and the experience was so positive that the whole team was behind the idea of, okay, let's go ahead then with a dedicated IR account. And that's something where I think it's a very good opportunity to reach out to the next generation of financial market participants.
I actually saw that. I think you're really pioneering in this. I think there's only, at least as of my knowledge, I think it's Fresenius who also has their own IR account.
They
and I also
started
know
that a while ago, and it's interesting to see. It's again, step by step, we were trying to figure out. But it's something that I don't take too lighthearted, because you want to make damn sure that you are not producing any glitches there.
Of course. Yeah. You have to take it seriously. You also have to produce enough content regularly enough, right? Otherwise, it's like a dead account. But no, I think it's great. Awesome. I think it's good to see.
Would you say that it's then social media, the new gold standard of IR, or how would you describe it at this point? I mean, as you mentioned, and there's just so many big players out there these days, and getting your equity story being heard on top of it in a digital environment, which is so clustered and with so much information being published all the time. How do you approach this topic?
Yeah, I think that's more than in the past the main challenge, to get the right share of voice, if you like, to make yourself heard. And the new formats that we just touched upon are, I think, complementary to the traditional way of relationship building, and that's face-to-face meetings. Yeah. So the big question, will there be traveling to roadshows and conferences also going forward? My answer to that is yes, please. Not because I like traveling so much, but that's a learning under the pandemic. As I just said, you can maintain relationships virtually, but it's very hard to build new relationships if you only see a two-dimensional face on the screen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it takes more. I mean, I noticed it's in my current role, the last roadshow we planned was quite a game changer in terms of the relationships they could build further with the current investors. So completely agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm pretty sure a successful investor relations function needs to find a way to gain the trust of the people you're interacting with. Yeah? So a lot of golden rules in IR already, so I don't want to add another one. Yeah. But you need to maintain this relationship. Also, if you go into a virtual format, you have to take it as serious as if you were sitting right in front of the other guy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely a people business, and you build trust usually about, meeting people also in person. But then, as you said rightly, maintaining this digitally is absolutely possible. Actually, I saw the other day an article in the Financial Times. No, not Financial Times, sorry, the FAZ, the German, the Frankfurter Allgemeine. And it was talking about the rise of finfluencers. So influencers that are basically, using TikTok, social media, YouTube, Instagram, and promoting stocks. Is that something that you have been considering in the past? Is that something that you find interesting at all? Or what are your thoughts on so-called influencers for certain stocks?
Yeah. When we started in a more structured process here in screening the digital world for new formats to get that share of voice that I mentioned, that topic was brought up as well, and this phenomenon. It's at first glance, it sounds appealing, yeah. But coming back to the golden rules, IR is not a sales function. Yeah? And I don't see IR as necessarily pushing the story in the face of everyone who's not fast enough to run away. Yeah? So it's something where I'm, as you can see, still shying away from. So probably there are different types of finfluencers out there, and maybe if I find the right one and run into the right person who gives me the good feeling that this is not about a board advertisement or something, but a serious platform where we can discuss the pros and cons that are around any corporate story, right?
Of course, yeah.
Then that would probably be more appropriate.
Absolutely. And I mean, already now you've mentioned a few potential pitfalls when you go digital, such as the thin line between getting your message out there and being rather a salesman, having glitches. At least on my side, I've seen also being coherent with the messaging. These are already some. But what would you say in general are other pitfalls that a company could have if they decided to go more digital, they decided to be more present on the internet?
Well, as you can imagine, the IR function here at the Deutsche Post DHL Group is not the only unit that's messaging out there in the social media world, right? So there are many colleagues or operations or divisions that are maintaining their own presence in the social media space. And that's a very good reminder that about 50% of the investor relations work is the messaging to the inside of the organization. Yeah? So I want to make sure that everyone in the group, and therefore also everyone who is potentially running his own social media presence in the corporate function, is aware of how the market is seeing us. And so they shouldn't be out there cheering fantastic results at a point in time where overall results are not very fantastic, or the other way around. So it's about consistency, and a prerequisite here is to make sure that you are keeping the organization internally well abreast of how the market is seeing us and what's going on out there.
For you, is it an IR function to keep checks and balances on the information that goes out also from other departments, if it's in line with your messaging with investors, or is there someone else who takes care of that?
Oh, I better do that myself, right? So it's something where, of course, we've got a pretty large comms function, which is taking care of the media work and internal comms and all the rest of it. And I'm in the fortunate situation that the collaboration with the comms colleagues is very constructive. And I heard of cases where this may be a bit more of a conflict zone. Yeah. That's not too enviable, I guess. No, you have to make sure that there is consistency. So this is why you find the comms and the IR function together in preparing the regular reporting, for example.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very important that they both collaborate together, because essentially this is, where the messaging goes out, and you need to be, as you said, very coherent and consistent in what you're saying inside and also outside the company. Maybe before we're diving more into the ESG part of the interview, we do have a last question on the sort of digitalization of investor relations, or the future of investor relations, if you will. And this is a question where you can get very creative with the answer, so there's no right or wrong. But I would be curious to hear from your point of view, where do you see investor relations to be in 20 years? Like, how are we interacting with investors, with shareholders, with potential shareholders? Yeah, super curious to hear.
I'm pretty sure that over the next 20 years, you will see IR, if in doubt, gaining importance and weight within the management team. This is against the background of to take activist investors. Yeah, so it's so important for management to make sure what's going on out there. It's something that I think no management in a big free float listed company can afford to sort of ignore. Yeah, and completely independent of what's the group's performance these days or whatever. Yeah, but you want to make sure that you've got first-class interaction with your shareholders, and that's something that is only to gain relevance in the management work generally.
Got it. And in terms of technical things, do you see this maybe going? I mean, I was maybe thinking of something like metaverse. I don't know, or is this too far out there? Like I was thinking maybe we are sitting all together in like a virtual world and having meetings there. Do you think this is possible?
I would definitely find it very fascinating if we had some sort of high quality, high res holographic solutions to simulate physical meetings. Pretty sure it's still not going to be the physical meeting, but at the end of the day, it's not going to replace the going there, meet the other person in their office, and you learn a lot more about someone if you go visit him in his environment. And it's not only about the 60 minutes that you do the exchange, but it's the important 10 minutes before and after the chat in the elevator, right? To the elevator and all this sort of thing. And I don't see this being replaced by any digital format.
Got it.
It's not too bad. We still do like to get around and meet people from time to time.
Yeah.
Moving to our next topic, ESG. I mean, we have seen how investors have to and want to allocate more importance to ESG topics. There are also purpose-driven investments going on, and they are picking up quite a lot. From your point of view, what do you see that investors care about in terms of ESG communication, but also ESG activities that a company is undertaking? Would you say that they're more focused on, could it be targets that they have to tick their boxes, or even seeing purposeful activities within the business lines of your business? How far does it go for you?
Yeah. It's going to go pretty far, but it's interesting for many years, both on the buy side, but also in the corporate world. A well-run business had some expertise on sustainability topics for a long while. Yeah? But until not too long ago, this expertise was pretty much isolated within the organization. Yeah. And it was not really linked to the day-to-day business. Yeah. So in IR terms, if I may describe the situation, 10 years ago, you had a group meeting with an investment firm with 6 people sitting there, maybe. Yeah. For 7 years, one of these 6 people was a junior who's working in the sustainability team. Yeah. 2 years later, at the end of the meeting, that junior was maybe allowed to ask one question. Yeah? Today, and I think that's describing the situation, today each and every decision maker on the buy side has understood that if I want to come to good assessment on the future competitiveness of this company, I have to get my arms around what they are doing on the sustainability side. Yeah. And so that's something that I started to tell my team here quite a while ago. Guys, like it or not, but this ESG thing is going to rank pretty high on our agenda going forward. And it was a bit of a change process, not only in IR, but in all other functions, for everyone to realize, these non-financial aspects of the business, whatever business it is that we are doing, these non-financial aspects are going to be a firm part of the knowledge and the data sets that we have to deal with going forward. And like with any other change process, there were the stages of initial reaction in form of rejection or trying to ignore. So some faster, some not so fast, but at the end, everybody understood, okay, so that's going to be with us and it's going to be one part of our day-to-day work. That's why I never wanted an ESG specialist here in my team.
Interesting.
I want each and everyone to be pretty much on top of things, because that's going to be something that is important also for the financial performance of the group going forward.
That's very interesting that you're saying that everyone needs to have a bit of ESG in their skill set, so to say, because it's such an important aspect of the work. Perhaps I think also it's interesting because obviously you as a logistic company, I think it's obviously a very important topic to address ESG on, maybe even more so than for other industries. But would you say that ESG roadmap and like a forward-looking targets that you're giving to investors really does add value to your investor base, or is it more like quarter-to-quarter evaluation of your ESG targets?
No, I think it's almost quintessential that you have a clear strategic approach that fits to your business. And admittedly, the reporting requirements have overwhelmed many participants. And at the end of the day, it's not about ticking boxes. You do this ticking the box type of exercise if you're not quite sure what to focus on. I think the classical IR performance here is to help the investors understand what are the key aspects that are relevant to any given business model. So in our case, it's very clear on the E part of the ESG agenda. We were operating a fleet of 300 or so aircraft globally. So that's by far the single largest lever to any CO2 reduction. That's alongside other aspects of last mile or line haul vehicles. It's on real estate, but the vast majority of our group CO2 emissions is in the aviation part. So that's where we need to tackle it. On the S side, we are a group of by now 600,000 employees. So guess what? Taking care of our employees is not something that only came with ESG. So we have I think, very, very good and proven tool set available to take care of the well-being and the engagement of our workforce. And thirdly, on G, in Germany, we've got this corporate governance practice, which for a long time has been a sport in its own right somehow. But when it comes to the broader aspect of governance, we are operating around the globe. We want to do cross-border transportation, so we better make sure that we are definitely on top of all the restrictions and requirements that are out there to be a trusted partner for our customers. So helping investors to single out what are the key aspects under each pillar for your business model is definitely an important role. And again, it's just like in the financial world. If you're not quite sure how to deal with it in the non-financial arena, think about how you deal with that in the financial world. And there's this good old saying, not everything that counts can be counted. And not everything that can be counted counts. So I think we will see a further evolution of the reporting requirements and the reporting practice.
Right.
Absolutely. And I really like that saying. I'll keep that in mind. And if we dive a bit deeper on the tasks and functions of your IR team or IR teams in general, what does this mean for future IRs professionals when they have to tackle these ESG tasks? It will be on one side speaking to investors and, as you said, being able to break down these pillars. But what else will it entail? Like, what skills will they have to be developing?
I think that there are three areas that you want to look at. So there is, of course, let me call it hardcore IR, the interaction with the analysts and with the institutional investors and their organizations. Yeah? I think what's more important than it was in the past going forward is to take care of retail investors. Yeah? And we IPO'd Deutsche Post in November 2000, and in an approach that was typical for that time, somewhat marketing driven, and the idea of this being a people's share, Volksaktie, was leading to quite a marketing heavy type of advertising campaign, something that you wouldn't do today, obviously. But there is a next generation of retail investors in all Western societies, and people are realizing that relying on your state pension or whatever that is not going to do the trick going forward. No. It's the IR task to make sure that you can reach out to these retail investors and the way they are going to gather their information, again, with more contemporary formats like podcast videos and at some point maybe even finfluencers. Yeah, and that's the second area. And the third area is really the more technical question: how do I bring my message and my information across? So in the past, there was a team here in my team doing the annual report, yeah, and 3 interim reports, and a website. Yeah. So these criteria are no longer distinguishable. Yeah. So there is no printed annual report. Even in terms of content, there is no single document or single piece of output that's going to cover it all. Yeah. So you have a variety of formats that you want to bring into the audience, and that's beginning with the website, but definitely not ending there. Yeah?
Right, super interesting. So we're actually already coming to our last question for the interview, and it's about how to find the right balance between ESG content and financial performance, like let's say the typical IR content. When you're going, for example, into meetings, do you have separate ESG meetings, for example, where you have like dedicated conversations about only ESG content, or are you usually addressing those topics, in the same meetings? Are you having, for example, special ESG capital markets days or ESG analyst meetings? Maybe you can give us a bit of more background on how you're running that separately or coherently.
Yeah, well, you heard me earlier. I don't think that these are two different lines of action. If you want to bring your corporate message across, it's gonna touch on the ESG aspect of life. I know that there are still dedicated formats for ESG only, and as long as these type of formats exist, I'm also happy to commit resources to showing up there, but I think it's a bit short-sighted. It's only telling part of the story. And therefore, I mean, we do formats here where we are not holding a fully fledged capital markets day, spending a whole day on all aspects of the group, which I think is also, anyway, a bit of fallback of the past, because it's pretty much information overload and hard to digest, and people have to commit a full day and then what? Yeah. So we sort of sliced the elephant, and I think having a deep dive format and virtual tutorial on an aspect like ESG is probably very much very, very useful to help understanding that part of our corporate story, but not the full story. Yeah. So you want to find the right balance in bringing the full group picture across, and then giving people opportunity to have specific deep dives on single areas within that, but you also have to understand the full picture. So it's both.
Interesting. I think it was HelloFresh who at one point did these interesting ESG sustainability deep dives. They would dedicate an hour and a half, would make it virtual and even available afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think one of the main aspects of the new formats is that the audience can choose where and when they want to digest it. Yeah, and
exactly.
That's probably even helpful for their better understanding. If you say, okay, now I'm ready and interested in hearing about Deutsche Post DHL's ESG strategy, or their express strategy, or whatever that is, and then they're sitting down there and enjoying a podcast, take away a lot, and don't have the pressure that you have, say, as an analyst on the capital markets day, where you think you are in a competition and you have to find out the fastest and the smartest on what's the essential content here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Martin. That has been super helpful for our audience and also for ourselves. Speaking also of Caroline here.
Yeah.
It was really great to catch up, and thanks again for joining on Street Reads.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, and good luck and lots of success with your work going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, wir sind jetzt auch schon wieder am Ende des Podcasts angekommen. Ich hoffe, dir hat diese Episode gefallen. Wenn du Hilfe brauchst bei irgendwelchen Kapitalmarktthemen oder digitalen Investor Relations Themen, dann melde dich gerne unter unicornconsulting.com und buch dir einen ersten freien Consulting Call. Wir würden uns ebenfalls darüber freuen, wenn du uns auf Social Media folgst, zum Beispiel YouTube, TikTok, Instagram oder auch LinkedIn, oder wenn du einfach einen Like da lässt. Ich wünsche euch alles Gute und bis zum nächsten Mal. Eure Julia. Ciao.